No, I don't know. The US has been disappointing. But then I think about like what would happen if all the immigrants left? Like what would happen if our voices were not in here trying to help the idiots like on idiot themselves?
Well, Jesus, I think it's time that you and I maybe start the steal. I don't think it's too late. I think it's time we start stealing this election. Hello and
Hi.
welcome. Hi to the Secret to Life podcast. My name is Eden, and I'm here with my dear friend Jesus Lopez Vargas. Jesus is uh what you actually do so many things. It's actually crazy. Okay, I'll just talk about how I met Jesus actually. I met Jesus through the world famous, world expanding, world changing New Swan Shakespeare Festival. Jesus is one of the kindest, possibly most genuine human beings I've ever talked to in my entire life. We went from being, he was my boss, and then we were co-directors, and then we were homies for life. And I just remembered because this actually isn't the first time me and Jesus have been on a podcast together.
Yeah, that's right.
Jesus, could you talk about how great my Spanish is for the viewers who have only heard me speak English in our incredible Siglo de Oro podcast that we did together?
Well, your Spanish is there. Um, it's okay to grow. It was okay. I was actually very proud of you because I could understand everything that you were saying. I was actually very proud of the fact that you decided to challenge yourself and do that for an academic podcast because I feel like in academia, I don't know, my experience of academia is that sometimes the presentation of stuff has to be perfect. And I love the fact that we showed that language is not perfect. And what matters is that you're communicating because language is just a tool to communicate. Obviously, there's more to language than just a communication tool, but at the end of the day, it's just for us to communicate, and you communicated, and that was the goal for our podcast. So I was very
That's
proud
why
of
I
you.
think you're such a beautiful educator and speaker because
Oh
you
my
turn something
god.
that is objectively funny into like actually maybe one of the most beautiful sentiments I've ever heard. Tell me about your educational journey. What brought you to?
Oh,
So we, like almost every other guest on the podcast, we met at the incredible university UC Irvine, where Jesus was a stage management graduate student.
I would also say it's a great university because of the students and some faculty and some staff. The university itself is kind of falling apart. They're my employer right now, and they're a mess administratively. And I'll
Can
just
I
put it out
keep
there
that
in
in?
case. Yes, please keep it in there because I feel like it's really important for students to know that the place that they're about to go into is falling apart. They also brought, the police to attack their students last year, and I'm very
Me?
disappointed on them. Yeah. So, University of Irvine, you have a lot to learn. I came to the university because I was an international student in Texas. I'm originally from Mexico, and I was studying stage management. And how my visa works, you needed the only way to stay in the States after your student visa is up, which is right after graduation, is to get a full time job. And in theater, it's really difficult to find full time jobs,
Yes.
period, especially when you didn't go to a school in a big city where there's a lot of theaters around. And my husband wanted to continue to live in the States. So my now husband partner, I'd rather refer to him as partner because I don't believe in marriage. My partner and I
God, you're
got
so
married.
cool.
So I ended up not needing to go to grad school, but I was already in grad school. And the process of grad school, we went to this thing called ERDAS, which is through theater, is a way to apply to multiple schools at once and go to like this conference where the theater professors are there from different universities, basically to save the students money instead of having to go visit like 10 different universities separately.
I'm doing it
And
this year. It's pretty sick, I think.
I think it's great. I had a lot of fun there. I applied to lighting school and stage management school, and my partner applied to only lighting and projections. And the only school that accepted both of us in different programs was UCI. So that is really the reason why I came to UCI. I wasn't truly impressed by their program, to be
Uh,
honest, but Julia Carrillo, actually, I was invited when I visited the school to see one of her rehearsals, and I was really
my
surprised
my
by her
Tia.
work. Yeah, and um, Anyway, that's my journey to UCI. And I honestly don't regret it because I met amazing, beautiful people there. Like you can in any place if you open your heart to it. But I made really beautiful connections there.
My first conversations, actually, my first real conversation with Jesus outside of it, like a like an interview, a Zoom call, was we were in something called the Barn. I had just completed my first year at UC Irvine, and I had just closed directing my first show, Mojada, the best show in
Nice.
history. But because of that, I had to miss some of the rehearsals for New Swan, Julius Caesar, where I was in ASM. And by the time I was able to come in, Lila Flashman, the GOAT, rest in peace, was also gone. So I I walked into the barn and I see this insanely tall creature with a mohawk sitting like the Buddha on like a pillow in the barn. And it's Jesus. And I sit next to Jesus and I'm like, hey, are you Jesus? And Jesus just goes, yes. Do you have a laptop? And I'm like, oh, did I need one? Jesus is like, here's a laptop. Get the rehearsal report ready. I'm like, what's a rehearsal report? Jesus is like, this is why you're not absent for things. And I'm like, oh my God. But that was our first conversation. And then two sentences later, Jesus goes, I hate my partner. And I'm like, what do you mean? Jesus is like, well, and then goes into a full story. And like, and hate is not like hate. It's like a term of endearment, I think, for both of us. But
Yes.
I went from being like rightly called out for being stupid to learning Jesus's entire romantic relationship with Jesus's 50 husbands.
I
And
can't believe that that was your first impression of me. I love this.
it was so awesome. And then Lila came back and Lila was like, what was it like being with Jesus? And I was like, so scary, but I did my best. And now we do podcasts together and bake bread. And I think that just shows the power of friendship.
Yes, yes, it does.
You
To be
told me
honest,
one time in a
uh
car ride that polyamory saved your marriage. And
polyamory did save my
I've
marriage.
always wondered what you meant by that because you told me in the car that you would tell me more about that someday. And now you're on a
Oh, and
podcast, so you have to tell me more about it.
and now you've chosen a public space. I love it.
Yeah.
Polyamory saved my marriage because there was a point. I was actually thinking about this right now, driving back from the gym, because I figured you would ask. I don't know
Wait,
why I
really?
thought you would get it. Yeah, you were gonna ask. And it's connected to a lot of my philosophy in life now. But there was basically an agreement that my husband and I made about our relationship, and he broke it, and I didn't know for 2 years. And when he finally talked to me about it, it broke my heart. It was one of those announcements. It didn't break my heart. It punched me in the face, and it made me really sad, and it was difficult. And I at that point, I had not been with Mando, because Mando and I started a relationship. Jesus, timeline. Okay, 8 years with my husband
Mhm.
partner, and then Armando came into the picture 2 years into it as a friend, and we were kind of dating boyfriends. And then we left the grad school, so Amanda was still finishing school. We kind of broke up, we separated, whatever. And then when my husband and I, Merle, I'm just gonna say his name, whatever. When Merle and I went back to El Paso during the pandemic, Mando and I kind of reignited something, but we didn't want to make anything official because he wasn't ready for it. And then the three of us and another friend moved to Baltimore. And in Baltimore, that's when this thing happened, that Merle revealed something that he did. And it was very rough. And I had just started navigating a new relationship with Armando. And so there was the four of us living in this new city. And then the two partners who were officially partners were basically separated, and I had to navigate that relationship with Armando while ending or breaking off or figuring out this other relationship. And we're all living in the same roof with this innocent friend who was literally, her room was in the middle of the two of their
You
rooms. It
live
was
such
insane.
you live such a gay life.
It was very, very queer. I loved it. But the reason why polyamory saved uh, my marriage is because it was through navigating the relationship with Armando that I learned more forgiveness and patience, and the way that two of them interacted in the same apartment and like sharing lives in a way. while navigating what they were individually navigating with me, showed me that people were very compassionate and kind and caring, and that at the end of the day, if you love someone and care for someone, that wins everything. That wins over anything. And ever since then, I moved through my life with forgiveness as being like one of the main things that drives me. Because I'm learning that once you let go of resentment or anger, that thing no longer has power over you, and it is so liberating. So whenever I decided to finally let go of that resentment from my first partner, I just felt like so much more freer to actually heal and move forward. And it was also just nicer. I was just living a nicer life after that. And then the three of us started navigating what fixing that relationship meant now that I was in another relationship, and what that meant for the two of them. Because in many ways, the two of them are not romantically involved, but we are all financially involved. We're all living in the same household. We all care so much for each other and have each other's backs. We call each other partner, and we're sexually involved sometimes. The three of us, or the two of us, or the two of them, or whatever. But it's beautiful to navigate this new thing. It's just a lot of forgiving and understanding that we are all fucking flawed, and communicate to the best of your ability and set boundaries and set your own parameters for whatever your own relationship is, whether it's romantic or with a friend or with a family member or whatever. But people fuck up. So if you care for someone, if you love someone, know that you're signing a contract to be hurt, and it's going to happen. And if you love each other, if love prevails, if care prevails, and you learn to forgive, it'll be beautiful and it'll be constructive. And if something happened that you just can't forgive, then just move on, and love can't prevail in that sense. But at the same time, you can still forgive while making the conscious decision to move on. Because if you don't forgive, then they're going to be present the entire time that you have in life. If you don't forgive, that person will not go away, even if they hurt you. You just have to forgive. You can't let them have control over you.
That was beautiful. And it reminded me of one of the big reasons I want to talk to you on the podcast is because recently I went through a bit of like a little crisis. And I had this realization because since moving to Seattle, it's felt like every week a new world-shattering thing has happened and like my life is crumbling. And, I'm applying to these things and like getting rejected and I don't know where my life is going and everything feels like unceasing struggle. And in a way that I thought by this time in my life, I would have found like something stable or great success. And I realized that, wait a minute, like there's no glorious purpose. We're not like destined, like the universe doesn't owe us like some great thing that we imagined. It was a very humbling experience, and I feel like I walk differently since having it. And I want to know if that, like, as I work through this, you're much older than I am. You're nearly 50.
Yes, indeed.
And and I was wondering if you ever had like a moment where you felt like what you thought like was destined for you isn't, and how do you cope? Like, where do you go? Did you have an ego about things too, like I did?
Yes. Oh yeah. I've had so many ego deaths. I think since I was in high school, a bunch of people around me would be like, "Hey, Jesus, you're destined for great things. You're a
Me
great
too.
leader,
Me
blah, blah, blah,
too.
blah, 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 blah." And it just gets into your head. So I put a lot of responsibility upon myself to work really hard and support others. And then the pandemic happened. And like even graduating, like so many professors that I hadn't even talked to were like, "Oh my God, Jesus, you're gonna do great things. So whatever."
Literally,
Um,
literally.
and I believed them out because I wanted to continue just making change out there. Right after graduation, I applied to this company in Massachusetts, this dance company, to be one of their project managers. And I got hired, and they were really nice to me. They allowed me to come late. They gave me a lot of accommodations in one way, but then I realized while I was there that they were just wronging me. Basically, I quit after like 2-3 weeks of
Mhm.
being there, and I was very angry and resentful. And this was a company that had built up to be like one of the most amazing companies, and they are one of the most amazing internationally renowned dance companies out there that just brings people together and from the world. And I realized that it was all just talk. and at the end of the day, it's all just people, right? A company, it's still all just people. And it just so happens that that company in that moment, the people were not ready to continue working. The people were not equipped with tools to support the guests that they were bringing in. The full-time staff couldn't assist to the best of their abilities, the seasonal staff, which I was one of them. And the workers were angry and resentful, and they would talk about the company and the leaders, and they would have these meetings, and I was part of it, even though all of them kind of like were returning. They have a relationship with each other, and they had relationships with the people that they've already worked with. And here I was sitting in this new place as one of the new guys, listening to people being extremely disappointed with leadership. I was like, you know what? I'm not enjoying this. It's not making me happy. They've broke their agreement 15 times. I'm getting out. After I found rat feces on my bed, literally falling from the ceiling. And so I wrote this 15-point 3-page letter to the leadership, and I was very depressed. And I was like, you guys have broke your agreement so many times, and I've come to some of your leadership already to tell you how you've broken it before it got to 15. And I left, and I was like, I was so disappointed because were coming back from the pandemic after there was so much discussion, like in white American theater. We see white American theater. So many people of color were standing up against their bosses, basically, and calling them out on their shit. And I thought, okay, pandemic is, people are getting used to this new normal, and it's going to be a different industry. And it wasn't. And I was so disappointed. And from then on, I stopped really applying to positions of leadership in bigger companies or bigger renowned companies, bigger budget companies, because I realized that it was not my responsibility to fix other people's problems, which had been a burden that I had carried with me since undergrad and grad school, because so many people were telling me, oh my God, you gotta know, whatever. And I started being more kind to myself and just being like, what makes me happy in this moment? Do that. That was my first ego death of like just being like, I'm not that great. I was surrounded by beautiful people that were even better than me. Like, I'm great because of my teams. I always tell people that, like, whenever they see a work that I've done or whatever, and they like it, I'm like, well, I had a team and they were amazing. I was just organizing them or coordinating them or whatever. I came up with an initial idea, but then the idea morphed into something new because of these people.
Exactly, yeah.
And I realized that I just didn't want to do that anymore. And so that was like one of the things. Thankfully, I had so many skills under my belt that I was able to survive while not pursuing direction or leadership or whatever.
You're also a photographer who I've never paid.
Yes.
You said ego deaths, and I want to ask you, like, what do you think the ego is? Because, like, I think the thought of like the ego is like something that like kind of holds back our own advancement. And I've never heard like someone refer to like the multiple deaths of the ego. Does your ego like restore itself and then die again?
Yes.
Like, and is it constantly like regenerating and be like, okay, maybe we're this now, and then it dies. Like, okay, I guess we still have a way to change. Tell me more about your ego,
Yes.
how you view
I
it.
think that the ego, I guess for me, my ego, it is a creation of both the context in which I'm in and my perception of that context and how I live within that context, kind of like a mirror image of myself, being aware of all those things. And it morphs and it has control, and very many things influence it. And I think of my ego as selfish and self-centered, which I am. My ego is also part of me. I am selfish and I'm self-centered in many ways as well. And that selfishness, that self-centeredness, is hungry for success, whatever that success might be in that season, for congratulations, for
Hey, congratulations,
a bigger paycheck. Oh, thank you. You just fed my ego. And when I refer to ego deaths is in moments in my life when I'm suddenly kind of like stopped suddenly, like an abrupt stop of the journey or whatever that journey might be, and I realize that my ego has now taken control over who I am, of like that drive of myself, of centering myself in whatever my narrative is, and not centering those that I love around me or my community. So I kill my ego and I go through processes of depression where, I mean, I don't know if I should call it depression. Sometimes it is depression, but I call it whatever. I go through dark moments in my life of
Carl
silence.
Jung would call that the dark night of the soul.
I love that. Dark night of the soul.
Yeah, it's like a Batman title.
And it sounds kind of quote unquote dark, right? Like negative, but in many ways it's so positive to just stop and have silence.
Yes, it's about confronting your shadow, about your ego, as you're phrasing it, like, and be like, okay, let's talk for a second. Let's talk one on one, myself to
Yeah.
myself, and figure out what we're doing.
Yeah. And I don't think my ego is necessarily my enemy. My ego is one part of me that I try to keep tamed. And sometimes I feed into that ego if I'm really focused on a goal and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, you need to take over right now because we need to get this accomplished. But then I tame it again.
You said like that, like you feel like you're this way. And I want to ask, like, what do you think makes you who you are? Without like
Oh, that's
saying like
fun.
these are my experiences and this is like this. Like, why do you think you are the way you are? In the sense that like, is anyone different than another person?
Huh.
Or is it
No,
are all these is what separates us from another person, all like these myths that we create for ourselves, like I'm
maybe.
this way and it
Yes, yes,
separates me from
and
yeah, okay, tell me more.
yes, and like I think I like to tell people that I am a puzzle, and all the people in my life that have changed me, both good and bad, are puzzle pieces,
Mhm.
and they together have become me. But then we get into perception
That's
of like,
beautiful.
I am who people perceive me to be. I am who I perceive myself in that day to be. Like I was
That's what I
talking
was gonna
to,
say. Yeah, is like
yeah,
who you are just a perception of
it just
yourself, but what you
changes.
are is some really are is something
It just
indescribable.
changes. Like I was talking, I've always battled with my body, of my perception with my body and taking care of my
Mhm.
body and how it looks or how it feels, because my body fails me sometimes to do what I want to do. And I was talking to Armando yesterday how, and I often talk to him about this, how I just have had all my life, I've had body dysmorphia,
Mhm.
hardcore body dysmorphia. That perception of me, I don't know what my body looks like because I'm perceiving it one thing while I'm lifting at the gym, and then 20 seconds later when I'm stepping out the gym, I perceive it as something different. So who I am changes literally every second. Um and it's beautiful. And I hope people realize that. I was just teaching a class for a friend on Monday at Pomona College. And I was telling the
Yo,
kids,
shout
like, I
out.
hope you all realize that you can just change. Like college, you might get a degree in this or whatever. Who gives a fuck? Like, go do something else different next year. Or like, if you won't feel 5 years from now that you're tired of something, do something else. Like this
Yes.
weird idea that Western world has created of pick a thing and then do it forever and be a person and commit to that narrative for the rest of your life is so stupid and um hurtful and degrading and limiting. And I don't know. I we are change. We are change, and we are transformation. We're movement.
I think that's what, yeah, I think,
We're part of nature. We forget we're like nature. Like nature gets affected by the seasons. We are nature. We get affected by the seasons just as much as we are affected by this fulano over here next to me making me feel good or bad.
oh, this is why you're on the podcast, dude. That's so well said.
Can I not? Okay, you reacted to me. I want to react to you real quick. Is this okay?
Oh my God, sure?
There was a moment in the first year that we were working together in the summer when I came early to the theater just because that's who I am. And I went to the backstage area and there were flowers in the back. And there's like this weird like cement stoop that separates the flowers from the theater. And Eden was sitting there early. And I was like, the fuck are you doing here? Like you're not called. What are you doing? And Eden was just staring at the flowers. And Eden and I then went into, and I love the flowers. I love the reason why I took this job. Like a lot of the reason is because it's outdoors, and I love nature, and I love to just look up and see trees when I'm working in theater instead of a dark room and a bunch of electrical shit. And Eden and I started talking about what the flowers mean, and then like our conversation went to like our bodies are going to turn into flowers, and isn't that beautiful when we die? And that's one of the moments where I was like, oh, Eden's like one of my people. I always tell Armando and Mer all the time, like, I just can't wait to become a flower. Because we're movement, we're transformation.
Yeah, like we were all once the dirt, and then before that,
Yes.
we were the stars that made the earth. What do you
And
think?
and some of us might have been together something, all like connected, right?
Yeah,
Because we're so individualized now, especially in the US. Like there's so much talk about individuality. But three of us could have been a tree together. Our
literally.
energy could have been shared to be a tree.
Because matter
What
can't be
how many times?
created or
Yes.
destroyed.
It just transforms.
Wow.
Transformation.
I mean, that's like we're all connected, right? Like the great
Mm-hmm.
prank of capitalism is that we've convinced ourselves we're like above nature in some way,
Mm-hmm.
or like we like have dominion over anything. But like the crazy, beautiful, extraordinary thing is that literally that tree next to me relies, like I rely on it as much as it relies on me to water it. And once I was that tree, because also time is something that we've
It's
all
not linear.
collectively made up. It's not linear. It's literally like, Jesus, I someday I'll die, L. And then I'll still be here on this call, but from the other perspective, from your room, and I'll be Jesus.
Yes.
Because it's all one. Do you ever, when you get old, do you ever think about like how old you are? I know you're 40,
Yeah.
but you're also canonically, I think 27. It was your 28th birthday,
Yeah.
maybe?
28.
Happy
28.
birthday.
Thank you.
Do you ever learn anything?
uh, Jesus, you haven't learned shit, bro.
Bro, yeah, no, you specifically. You ever learn shit, idiot?
I mean, to be honest, yes and no. I have forgotten so much of the crap that I've learned, like just
Me too.
facts. Like I used to love math, and the other day I picked up not picked up. I was like online, whatever, and I saw a math problem. I'm like, I used to love this and be so good at this. Like I wanted to make this my career, and I'm like every way of solving that specific problem I have forgotten, and I think that's also just beautiful. I love the idea of being resourceful, of like stacking things into my library and not necessarily knowing the answers of it, but being able to know, okay, that's where I stored it. Let's go find that notebook or that piece of paperwork
Yeah.
or that binder, that book, whatever, and then reference it and then relearn it. I am super forgetful. I probably have memory problems. So we'll see in a couple of years what happens with that. But I think that has allowed me to be more malleable as well, I guess.
More present,
I,
more able to let go of things.
yeah, more present, more adaptable. I think I think unlearning is beautiful.
I actually really agree.
Yeah, I think unlearning is beautiful. And if a piece of information is not helping you right now, or it's not, or a belief is not serving you purpose right now, it's okay to let it go and learn something else. And I also believe that the whole idea of like your brain is like a cup and eventually it gets full. Sometimes you have to empty that cup.
You can, and so many people like me, I'm talking about me right now, is their cup is always filled every moment they wake up with beef, with reactions to the way they were mistreated or maybe the way they mistreated someone else. It really is just something that to let go of because
Mhm.
there's not anything that thinking can do for you. No one, I think, in the history of the universe has ever thought their way out of a problem. They've done
I'm,
something to get their to get themselves out of a
yes,
problem.
I agree. Like thinking is so passive, and in order for there to be a change, there has to be a reaction. So the
Yeah.
action needs to be the one that changes it. And also, like I think about thought all the time about is thought who I am? I think thought is also part of who I am, but who I am is mostly my actions because
I've been
sometimes,
asking every person who will listen about this because yes, tell me
yeah.
more.
Well, because like I have been like I remember when I was a kid, when my mom like didn't do let me do something that I really wanted to do, I had like this narrative like I'm gonna murder her, and like I was just a dumb child being angry, reacting to a moment, but I never did anything. I love her, like I would have never done it, but my brain wasn't like I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like it's so private, and it's how we process information, and it's how we react instantly to something but at the same time it's not affecting someone else, so you can decide, oh, I don't want that narrative for myself, let
Yeah.
me do something different, let me act upon it. And I think a lot of obviously like thought, I think that thought is a lot of who we are because how we process things and how we get to determine what our action will be, our methods influence that action.
So how are
But
those methods created? Like, is it something that's inherent in us in birth, or is it something that we learn based on the ways we react to the way our parents raised us? Like, basically what I'm saying is like when we're born, are we like a blank slate and it's the world that imparts these methods and ideas onto us? Or is
I
the way that we react to the way the world treats us something that's inherent in us?
I think we are inherently something, and yes, the context, the world, whatever the environment will change you. Your experiences will change you. You gave a lot of power to that context. You said something like, "Does the world change you?" And I think yes. Now that I'm older, I'm trying to text while answering this question. I've decided to not give the world power over me,
Mhm.
over how it changes me. Um, I will call back. Sorry. Um, like meaning if somebody, for example, if somebody hits you, you can say you can hit them back and say they made me do it. Nobody
Mhm.
made you do it. Take responsibility for your action. and your thoughts that led you to that action. If someone hits you, you do not have to hit back. It is not a pendulum that like if you hit it, it like swings back. Your hand is not a pendulum. Like you have the choice. You can take the action. So the world around you, the people, the environment around you, obviously there's instances where you don't have a choice, right? And you just have to act, whatever. But have some responsibility for how the world treats you, including other people. That was like, that sounded so preachy. I've been told
No,
that
no,
I'm
it's that
that's
I'm
my
here for it.
philosophy. That was how I treat my life now, because that way also I give less power to others and the world around me and things that happen to me accidentally. Because if instead of saying this happened so I feel this way, or you said something that made me angry, what you said did not make me angry. My thoughts, my ego, my brain, my past reacted collectively. I reacted to what you said, and it made me angry, and I became angry.
Yeah.
But I could also make the choice to funnel those thoughts and breathe and not be angry. So this person who said that did not hurt me with their words. I mean, I felt hurt because of their words. And now that I have this philosophy, I'm able to take responsibility over how I feel. And it's so much more freeing, and I have so much more power now because nobody controls how I feel. Nobody forces my hand to slap back. I make that choice consciously. And this is all just reaction on how you phrase something. But yes, I think the world obviously changes you. The world, the context have an impact on you, an imprint on you. But you as an individual, I as an individual have the responsibility to also shape myself amongst that impact. That was weird. Did that make sense?
That was amazing.
I hope people like, you know, the 100 people that listen to this, I don't know what your viewership is, your listenership is. I encourage everyone to try and do that. Like next time someone wrongs you, take responsibility over how you feel. Do not give them the power to be responsible about how you feel. Their action affected you. Your reaction is under your control, and it'll be so much more liberating.
Yeah. I have nothing but a retweet for that. Like just like I loved what you said about how you are in that moment anger and you can let it like you can feel that. Because I feel like a lot of problems, I would say most of the problems of the world come from like just bottling up your feelings and letting that shit fester. And I think if you can say like in this moment I am anger, which is anger is like an indescribable thing, like a word that we've put to an indescribable feeling. If you could just like feel that feeling and let it like like a flower, like what we were saying earlier, like how a flower like blossoms and then withers and dies and then just returns to the soil to become energy for another thing.
Yes, you can transform that energy into something else. Like in the instance of somebody like, I feel like we communicate. If I was having an argument with you and Eden were to insult me with her words, most people would react by saying, Eden hurt me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving you the agency over my pain. But instead, if I rephrase it to say, Eden said something and I reacted to it with anger, with hurt. I don't know. I feel like in communicating, how we communicate our own thoughts also has so much power over how we understand the world.
I
So if
agree.
you train yourself to recommunicate something that happened and rephrase it in a certain way, you'll hear it differently. You'll understand it differently. And you'll see that Eden did something that caused you to feel something, but she did not decide this for you. Eden did not hurt me. Eden said something and I reacted with hurt, or I felt hurt. And then it's easier to analyze that thing. And also you can transform that thing that could have been hurt and anger, transform it, use that energy for something else and turn it into something constructive. And you can react to Eden by saying, hey, you hurt me, let's talk about it. And then Eden might realize that they've been hurting people their entire life, but it wasn't until this moment that somebody's telling them, don't say it that way. And now you've turned something that was negative, anger and frustration and resentment or whatever, pain, you've transformed it. You yourself have taken agency over the situation, control over it, and turned it into a flower. And then, okay, so then move forward to, I'll promise that I'll tie this all in. Moving forward to another time in my life, a friend that I no longer talk to, he hates me. We were talking about language. He's kind of like a prick. He's very into like protecting colonists. We were talking about language, and I was trying to explain to him, and I still cannot explain. I probably won't be able to explain this, but I was trying to explain to him how I am angry at English and Spanish because they're the colonizers' language. And there's so many things that I want to say in my life through photography, through writing, through music, through singing, through sounds, through melodies that cannot be, that I feel like they haven't been able to communicate what I was trying to communicate. And maybe I'm making this up, maybe it's just poetics, maybe I don't know. But I think part of it is because the history of my body does not recognize this language as what I'm
Yes.
trying to communicate. So I resent English, I resent Spanish, even German when I try to learn German, because none of them connected to how my tongue and my body physically and spiritually wanting to say something. The closest I have come to it is painting and music. Music, not without lyrics. That has been the closest that I've come to being able to express what I'm actually trying to say. Um, all that to say that I started painting because I was trying to express more with my photography again after I took a hiatus from it. And I realized that I wasn't ready to go back into that beautiful medium like full time, because before there was like a period of 8 years of my life where I was photographing, like doing photo shoots and collaborating with artists as models like 3 times a week. And the days that I wasn't taking photos, I was editing photos. Um, and that was a beautiful time in my life. I learned so much and I met so many beautiful people, and they had so many great experiences because most of my photography is nude. So a lot of them found things about themselves through the process of the photography. Anyway.
I think you are on the right podcast. I've talked so much about language because language, like, you feel like the language isn't made for you. And that's because
Yeah.
it's not. It's a colonial language. And Spanish was developed in the context of its region and time period and environment. And that's why languages evolve. But since colonialism, languages like Spanish, French it's called like the ministers of their language or whatever, that like
Mhm.
departments made to make sure that the language doesn't change enough so that it can keep enforcing its hegemony. But these languages weren't made for us. I was on shrooms once, and
Mhm.
during that shroom trip, I forgot English and Spanish. Not that I had a lot to forget of Spanish anyway, but for like an amount of time, I could only think in Nahuatl, and it was like I thought, and it like the way I even just like saw the colors of the world was different. And it was only when I started to get scared while on Trues where I was like, what if I never speak English again? How am I going to direct? That I was like, wait, okay, now like I came back. But it was like for that brief time, I think about that so much because a language is so much of the what our eyes see, and this is going to sound crazy, but this is about the connection between thoughts and ways of viewing the world, because thought is a function just like our tummy rumbling. It's not you. You are not your thought. It's just a function of your body. But because thought does influence your body in the same way that the liver can get poisoned, the way the language you think in changes the range of your thought. There's that book, Don't Sleep There Are Snakes, about this guy who went to go study the Piraha people in the have you heard about this in the
Mhm.
Amazon? So this group of people was like one of those like untouched native groups in the Amazon, and their language didn't have numbers or time in it. And he was like, how do they view the world? And he was basically like, these guys exist in such a different way than the colonized and the Western brain can ever imagine. And it makes me want to tear my teeth out because I think that before colonialism, there was a whole other continent of millions of people viewing the world in ways that we could never possibly imagine now.
Mhm.
I lost my car and I've had to carpool with people recently. And I was talking to this, she's a friend now, but she's like an older white woman who was just very ignorant in the way she was saying things. But she was giving me a ride, and whenever I'm talking to someone, I wanted to learn everything about their soul. I was trying to express why it hurts my soul that like we will never like let's talk about gender for a second.
Mhm.
Like in the modern day, we're trying like the gender revolution, we're viewing things outside the binary and all this stuff. And some people are turning to like, well, how did like these different Native American groups view gender? And for like the Mexicas, they view gender literally just the occupation you did. If you wanted to hunt, you were like we've rewritten it, and I'm using my English language because it's the only way I can describe it. If you wanted to like hunt and do this stuff, you were like a male in society. And if you wanted to sew and shit and like you were a female in society. But even that is an understanding of it through a Western perspective. Like we can't go back basically. Because like if I was to, I could be completely correct. If I was talking to a person from that time, they would be like, "Oh, you don't get it," basically. Because I'm still trying to translate in my brain this idea that cannot be translated into English. Do you feel the
Yes,
same way,
the
basically?
exact same way. Like there's sometimes problems that I have to solve that I cannot use English language to form the thoughts, to form the problem solving process.
I mean, that's why we're
Anytime
drawn
that,
to art, is because we
yeah,
need, humanity needs to express itself and we can't.
there's literally sometimes like whenever I have a fight or something or conflict management that I have to first think in Spanish and then try to translate it, and then I realize, oh, it's not translating. So I have to find the closest thing possible to communicate and be able to solve this confrontation that I'm having in the moment. And then people look at me like, why are you taking so long to speak? And I'm like, it's because I'm working out how to solve this
Mm,
problem with a language that I don't know. They're so limiting sometimes, feeling like there isn't some a way for me to say something or feel, even to feel something. Like there's moments where whenever I want to put a name to how I'm feeling, and it's limited.
yeah. In English, you get, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, so what do we
What
do?
do we do? I don't know. I hope one day to actually move back to Latin America and actually immerse myself in a community, in a different community that is not as westernized. I don't know. That's like my dream.
Well, that's actually, so like you have that dream and you have two lovely partners. Shout out to Mondo. I
Mhm.
still don't know Merle, even the littlest bit, which is so funny because a lot of people know you and Merle together, but I only know
Mhm.
you and Mondo. So so I've been like I'm a solo flyer basically. Like on my Pokemon journey, it's not Ash, Ketchum, and Brock. Ketchum is his last name. Ash, Misty, and Brock. It's Ash on a journey, and I'm Ash, and I've traveled like every 2 years. I basically moved to like a new place, and I live an entirely new life. But you got some people with you. What's that like?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful to just have support and somebody there. And we're also very complementary, the three of us. So my strengths are not any of their strengths, and vice versa. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing that's happened in my life to be able to deconstruct so much around me and help them and assist them and them assist me in deconstructing it with each other and then being able to define it by ourselves.
You do live
Um,
like the ideal Tumblr life of living in like a beautiful family in like a very aesthetic house in like a very nice place with like a cat, or is it two cats?
two cats.
Literally two cat. Like Jesus, you live like someone. You're a fan fiction character for someone. You're like an
Oh,
ideal.
thank you for saying that because I fan fiction has changed my life.
Tell
Fan
what kind
fiction
of fan
took
fiction
brought
are
me
you
here.
into?
I love the like adventure mixed with relationships figuring themselves out, whether it's
Yeah,
romantic or just friendships.
you are
Once
an
the
AO3 fan fiction.
Yes, I am an AO3 fan fiction person. Find me if you can. Sammy Moore, who's a common friend of ours, is still trying to figure out my fan fiction
Do you
account.
write?
I used to, and I still get notifications still right now. There was this like giant three-parter fan fiction that I started in Star Wars world. And I have people still continue to be like, when are you gonna post the next part? Like we're waiting,
Oh
what's
my
gonna happen?
gosh.
And I every year I tell myself, this is a year that I finish it, and I never do. Eventually I will.
The glorious Ethan Ponte, another friend of ours, wrote a fan fiction in like 2012 and
Mhm.
finished it last year. Like,
I mean, so far, what I've written of that specific fan fiction, it is like novel sized, which is crazy to me that I could just, put that time and energy into writing an original novel. But also, who gives a fuck? Like, it's just so much easier to write narrative whenever the
yeah,
characters are already there and the world's already there, and you just have to insert literally a narrative, a set of actions, a plot point.
I think that goes into just like you can do anything in life. Heather Lee, another great friend of ours, put it
Mhm.
very well when she said that this is like an open world game. You can
Yes.
live a new life every day if you
Hmm.
want. You don't like we got degrees in theater. I actually just applied to be a investigative journalist
I
for
would
the
love that.
Seattle local news because I'm like, I think I'd love to do that.
Yes, please do. Do anything.
Do
Do anything
anything.
you
Do
want.
do whatever you want. Is that so I guess my final question to you is like, are you happy?
Oh my God, that's your final question. Do you ask everyone that question?
It depends on if they're happy.
I feel I don't think I can answer that question just because happiness is like a state of being. And like I said, I'm
Ooh, good
changing and
answer.
transforming every single time. I think how I'll answer is that I'm experiencing joy often with my family and I'm challenging myself and growing, and that brings me joy, even though some people might see challenges like, oh, it's stressful. It is stressful, but because I have the resources right now to challenge myself to continue becoming, I'm finding a lot of satisfaction and joy in that process of kind of like just relearning who I am and changing the pieces that I don't like.
And I think that's the way
Um,
you live day to day. Because, like, there's this, we talked about it earlier in the podcast, there's this election thing. And I was kind of sad because I'm like, well, if that means climate change is over, like, I won't get to live to old age. And a friend of mine was like, that's kind of a silly thought, isn't it? That like for most of human history, we didn't imagine we'd get to live to old age. Like if you were 20, that was pretty cool. And I was like literally like the world changed color. As I said before, I was like, oh my God, I've been living for tomorrow instead of just being alive today and experiencing it and living in
yeah.
the present.
Yeah, I was teaching, oh my God, I was teaching the students. There were non-theater students taking a theater class. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? And we came up with this idea of teaching them something about theater, but then I got there and I saw them all. And they were all pulling out their computers as they were arriving, waiting for the rest of the class to arrive. And they were just kind of like immersed in this one black hole, which is in front of them that happens to have pictures moving, the computer. And I realized that these students, these 10 students sitting in front of me, were living right now, waiting for these 3 hours to pass so they could leave. They were looking for the future. And I told myself, this is dumb. I'm not going to teach a thing that I was going to teach and just lecture to them about something they don't give a shit about. And I pulled out art supplies and I made them get into groups and we did like an art exercise and self-reflection exercises and like them criticizing each other and how they communicate. And they walked out of the room being like, Jesus, thank you. Like we can now say hi to each other outside of this classroom and like even like maybe go out for coffee,
Whoa.
because so much of what we need to do, I truly believe that so much of what we need to do right now in this point of history is connecting with each other and knowing that we're not alone and being present and taking care of each other in that present. Like so much of what's wrong with capitalism is the consumption and hoarding of goods and materials. So all these people are just accumulating wealth. Even me right now, I have a savings account.
Ah,
What for? Why the fuck do I have a savings account? Like, why don't I invest that on helping others in the moment? So much of what's wrong with capitalism is that hoarding of like, I need to have
yes.
this for what's going to happen in the future. Baby, there's no future. We're dead. We're
There,
all going to die. Like, Mother
there's
Earth is
none.
going to heal once she murders us, and it's going to be a wonderful time, but we won't be there. So be there in the present for each other right now. And we're missing that. People are still hoarding. We're still thinking, oh, I got to go to school to find a job to save money to buy a car to, you know, what?
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's such a weird mentality
They
that we
say like when you die, you don't get to take like your wealth with you. But the other thing we don't seem to remember is that you also don't get to take your experiences with you.
have. Yes.
Once you die, it's all gone.
Yes. You're just energy there for a flower
Yeah,
to bloom.
there's nothing to lose but your life. So like live.
Yes. Live.
Jesus
Yes.
Enrique Lopez Vargas.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on to the
Thank
Secret of
you.
Life podcast. You have to meet with our incredible dear friend and former guest star of the podcast, Neil Lacan, soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I
In
want to
like
give you plenty
20
of time to
minutes.
eat, even though you
Thank you.
ate this entire podcast.
Wow.
I know,
Poetry.
I'm using the kids' language. Kate Sheehan taught me that one. I really loved every aspect of this conversation.
Same here.
Okay, goodbye. Not bye to Jesus,
Bye.
bye to the podcast.
Why are we waving?
Oh my God, I've never thought about that.
Uh,
Oh my God, I'm so